Welcome to Paskvan Podcasts. Please like, subscribe, and comment. It really helps this channel. Today, we are opening the gates to a story that, well, it begins at the very height of American ambition. But it descends over 4 generations into just a relentless, almost unbelievable sorrow.
We're exploring the history of the Lemp Mansion in St. Louis, Missouri, and this place, it wasn't just a house.
No, it started as this shining symbol of industrial triumph, but it became a monument to despair.
Exactly. The sources we've gathered, they tell this story of an immigrant dream that explodes into a huge brewing empire only to be just completely consumed by loss.
By sequential personal loss. And then these strange spectral occurrences that, according to so many reports, are still happening in its halls right now.
Our mission here is pretty clear. We want to chart the transformation of one of America's great Gilded Age dynasties into, one of its most potent ghost stories.
We want to understand what happened, of course, but there's also this eerie possibility we want to explore.
The idea that immense, repeated human suffering can leave a kind of emotional residue on a place, on the architecture itself.
Turning a building into a witness, a silent, mournful witness to its own downfall.
So let's start at the beginning. Before any of the darkness, back when the Lemp dynasty was at the absolute peak of its power.
It all begins in the 1830s with a German immigrant named Johann Adam Lemp, a very determined man.
He arrived in the United States looking for what so many were looking for: opportunity, stability. He'd left a Europe that was really struggling with economic hardship.
But he brought more than just ambition with him. He brought a secret.
He really did. It was a technological secret in a way. He knew the precise technique and the recipe for German lager.
And you have to understand, this was a massive disruption in the American market at the time.
Oh, absolutely. In the 1830s, if you wanted a beer in America, you were probably drinking a warm, inconsistent ale. They were brewed quickly. They weren't very stable.
And then Johann comes along. He introduces his lager, which is cleaner, smoother.
And critically, it's served cold. It requires the sophisticated cold storage. For the American palate at the time, it wasn't just a new drink. It was a complete revelation.
He was a sharp businessman, too. He didn't start big.
No, not at all. He opened a small grocery shop, very modest, but he was watching his customers.
And he saw where the real demand was.
Exactly. People weren't lining up for his dry goods. They were coming for the German-style beer he was quietly brewing in the back room.
And he recognized that signal right away.
Immediately, he shifted the entire business over to brewing. And that was the bedrock, the foundation of what would become this massive industrial empire.
The real genius here, though, wasn't just the recipe. It was the location. It was St. Louis itself.
Yes. The city had this unique geological asset that Johann discovered and, frankly, exploited perfectly.
The limestone caves.
The vast network of natural limestone caves right under the city. This is so critical to understanding their rise.
Explain why, because it's not immediately obvious.
Well, lager brewing, by its very nature, requires cold, stable temperatures for long periods. It's a cold aging process.
And this is way before mechanical refrigeration.
Way before. So the ability to keep something cold year-round, especially through a hot St. Louis summer, that was almost priceless.
And the caves provided that naturally.
Perfectly. They maintained a constant temperature of around 55 degrees Fahrenheit. It was a natural refrigerator just waiting to be used.
So Johann didn't just use them, he transformed them.
He did. They became these huge underground storage vaults. You can just picture it, barrel after barrel stacked deep beneath the earth, letting the beer ferment to perfection.
And as demand grew,
the brewery grew deeper into the earth. It was relentless. They hired engineers, laborers to carve out new tunnels to make the existing chambers bigger.
So they created this underground network that stretched beneath the whole neighborhood.
For blocks, yeah. The physical roots of their empire weren't just on the street. They were literally embedded in the limestone deep under the city.
When Johann passed on in 1862, his son, William J. Lemp, took over. And the sources all describe him as, well, a titan.
He was unquestionably brilliant, a very sharp businessman, and just profoundly ambitious. He took this respected local business his father built.
And he shot it into the stratosphere.
That's a good way to put it. He propelled it toward national and even international greatness. Under William, the brewery went through this massive modernization.
He invested in new technology.
Heavily. Early refrigeration systems to supplement the caves, faster bottling lines. He didn't just rely on a good product. He systematized everything. The distribution, the quality control.
And just how big did it get? Give us a sense of the scale.
By the late 19th century, Lemp was an industrial powerhouse. For a time, they were the single largest brewery in St. Louis.
Bigger than Anheuser-Busch.
For a while, yes, before Anheuser-Busch eventually surpassed them. Lemp beer was shipped all over the country by rail and even overseas.
So the name Lemp meant something. It wasn't just beer.
No, it meant immense wealth. We're talking millions of dollars. And it meant uncompromising quality.
And with that kind of money, their status completely changed.
Oh, completely. They weren't just ambitious immigrants anymore. They were an aristocratic dynasty.
They were powerful in St. Louis society.
Respected, feared, envied. They hosted these lavish parties that were, the place to be. Politicians, other industrialists, high society, everyone came to the Lemp parties.
And that kind of status, it demands a physical symbol. Which brings us to the mansion.
Yes, the mansion itself. Built in the 1860s, just a few blocks from the brewery, the source of their fortune.
And it wasn't just a house, it was a statement.
It was designed to project absolute dominance.
So help us picture it. What does a mansion built to project that kind of Gilded Age power look like?
It was immense, sprawling, multiple stories. The architecture wasn't just for comfort, it was for display.
So grand materials.
Grand everything. Limestone and brick construction, soaring high ceilings, rooms just elaborately furnished. They imported silks, wallpapers.
And the woodwork I've read was incredible.
Stunning hand-carved woodwork throughout. Every single detail was chosen to communicate success, power, permanence. It was, for all intents and purposes, a private palace in the middle of the city's elite district.
So the life they lived inside those walls was one of just extraordinary privilege.
Completely. Servants for every need, museum-quality art on the walls, the children getting elite educations, summers spent traveling in Europe.
Outwardly, they were the absolute poster family for the American dream.
Achieved and then multiplied, generation after generation. But the sources hint that even during this peak, this golden era, there was something off. A quiet darkness around the house.
A symbolic darkness.
Yes, and it's a huge part of the Lemp mythology.
We already established the literal connection, the physical darkness below. Those tunnels.
Right, the tunnels that physically linked the mansion directly to the cold, damp brewery cavern.
Which seems like a brilliant convenience.
It was ingenious, really. The family and managers could walk underground, away from the street, right from their homes to the heart of the brewery. But it also introduced this element of unease.
The story started early then.
Even in the late 19th century, stories started circulating about strange noises echoing up from beneath the house, groans, shuffling sounds that people just blamed on the cave network.
And workers down in the tunnels.
Exactly. Workers, alone in the dark down there, started claiming they saw fleeting shadows moving in the passageways, shadows that didn't belong to anyone.
And this was all dismissed at the time.
Oh, yeah, just workers' superstitions.
Yeah.
Echoes, drafts, tired eyes playing tricks on them. But it established this underlying eeriness.
It emphasized that this family, in all their above-ground glory, was tied to this cold, dark, silent world right beneath their feet.
It's a very Gothic contrast, isn't it? The bright, lavish parties in the parlor room sitting right on top of a silent, dark network of caves.
And of that contrast, it really reflects the fragility of it all.
Yeah, it does, because that outward perfection, it hid some very complex and often harsh family dynamics.
William J. Lemp was a demanding patriarch.
Incredibly strict expectations. This led to, fragile egos among his children and just immense crushing pressure on the sons who were expected to take over the empire.
Let's unpack that a bit. The whole empire was held together by pride, by duty.
And by the sheer force of William's will. But that kind of relentless ambition, it creates this internal stress that, it just wasn't sustainable.
And that pressure was about to cause the first devastating crack in the facade.
The whole story pivots in the 1890s. An unexpected, catastrophic personal loss. Frederick Lemp.
William's youngest and favorite son.
He was charismatic, smart, and he was the designated heir to the whole brewery empire.
And he passed away suddenly at just 28 years old.
The official cause was listed as heart failure, which, it's plausible, but for a young, seemingly healthy man, it was a sudden and unexplained end.
And this was the first real blow to the family's sense of invincibility.
It was a seismic blow, Frederick's passing's just. It broke something inside William J. Lemp. The sources are clear on this. He never, ever recovered.
His drive, his ambition.
It just cooled. Something vital, his fire, it went out. He started to withdraw from the day-to-day business. He became a different man.
And the whole atmosphere of the mansion changed with him.
Completely. No more lavish parties. His deep sorrow just settled over the house like this heavy, inescapable fog. The mood went from triumph to this quiet, constant despair.
This is where you can feel that emotional imprint really starting.
It's the absolute origin of the mansion's spectral reputation. William became a, quote, ghost of his former self. Still there, still wealthy, but just hollowed out by grief.
And that darkness led to its first terrible conclusion, February 13th, 1904.
William J. Lemp, having isolated himself inside his huge, luxurious office, the very room built to command an empire, he withdrew from the world entirely.
He performed a final desperate act.
He took his own life with a firearm. In this event, it did more than just shock St. Louis society.
The whispers started.
Immediately. The papers printed these very respectful, somber tributes, but behind closed doors, people started saying the mansion now carried this new, terrible weight.
The weight of a life that ended in despair right inside its own walls.
And this is so crucial for the rest of the story. This was the first self-inflicted end inside the mansion. It set a terrible, dark precedent.
It was the first turn in a cycle.
A cycle of tragedy that would not only define the building's future, but would repeat itself with this shocking, mournful regularity. The weight of the empire and all that sorrow now passed to the next generation.
And after William's tragic end, this massive empire fell to his surviving son, William Lemp Jr., but everyone knew him as Billy.
Billy was, by all accounts, the opposite of his father in many ways. Charismatic, very stylish, outwardly a man of high society.
But he inherited more than the company.
He inherited his father's immense psychological burdens. He was fighting deep depression and a dependency on alcohol that was getting worse and worse.
He was stepping into an impossible role.
Completely. He had the weight of his father's legacy, the burden of this huge company, but he didn't have his father's business mind or, frankly, his work ethic.
So Billy's leadership was different.
It was characterized by this kind of superficial, lavish excess. The parties came back to the mansion bigger than ever, but there was something hollow about them.
And while the parties were going on, the business was suffering.
The company was losing ground fast. Anheuser-Busch was innovating, expanding, and Lemp was just stagnating. Billy's attention was elsewhere. The giant was starting to bleed money.
And the situation was about to go from a difficult decline to a complete catastrophe.
January 17th, 1920, the Volstead Act is implemented. Prohibition begins.
And for the Lemp Brewery, this was more than a problem. It was a death sentence.
An absolute death sentence.
Why was it so much worse for them compared to other brewers?
Specialization. The Lemp infrastructure was completely 100% optimized for one thing: German-style lager.
Which means?
It means huge fermenting tanks designed for long, cold aging. It means specific yeast strains, specialized bottling lines. Other brewers, maybe they were more diversified, they could pivot.
Right, they could start making soft drinks or ice cream.
Exactly. But the Lemp operation, you couldn't just convert that massive, expensive machinery easily or cheaply. It was built for one purpose.
So overnight, their entire empire became obsolete.
Functionally, yes. The impact in St. Louis was stark. Those giant fermenting tanks, silent. The bottling lines, empty. And great limestone caves.
Very source of their wealth.
Now they just sat dark and cold. The sources describe them, and it's so chilling, like empty tombs.
And then came the final humiliation.
The company, once valued at tens of millions, was liquidated in 1922 for just a tiny fraction of its worth.
Dude, shoe company.
The International Shoe Company. The financial pressure, the emotional weight on Billy was just immense.
And as the family fortune was crumbling, the mansion's dark reputation started to grow, fueled by these really unsettling local rumors.
This is where we get the whispered story of the alleged child, born with significant physical deformities.
The one with the cruel nickname, the Monkey Boy.
Yes. The rumor was that this child was hidden away, locked in the mansion's attic, completely shut off from the world.
We have to be careful with this, right? Is there truth?
Historians still debate whether it's factual or if it was just vicious local gossip. But in a way, it doesn't matter. The meaning of the story is what's so powerful.
It became a symbol.
A dark symbol of a family unable or unwilling to confront its own secrets, its own imperfections. It added this profound layer of hidden darkness to the mansion's story.
And while all this was happening, the personal tragedies just kept coming. It was like a grotesque domino effect.
It really was. Just a few months after Prohibition started, in 1920, as the financial walls were closing in, Billy's sister, Elsa Lemp, gave in to her own struggles.
She was one of St. Louis's wealthiest, most visible society women.
and she took her own life at her home. It was another devastating public blow to the family. It just underlined that all their money offered no protection from this internal suffering.
And then, just 2 years later, December 1922, Billy Lemp.
Billy performed the same tragic ritual as his father. He walked into the exact same room in the mansion.
The luxurious office.
The very same office where his father had ended his life, and he did the same.
By repeating that act in that room,
he cemented the building's reputation for inescapable, cyclical misfortune. The second self-inflicted end in that specific room, it sealed the mansion's fate in the public imagination.
So who was left?
The family was fractured. The only brother who still had a connection to the mansion was Charles Lemp, so he moved in.
And Charles is different from Billy.
Very different. Described as quiet, reserved, almost obsessively orderly. He tried to maintain the house with this rigid control, but he became more and more isolated within those walls.
That seems to be the final stage of the Lemp story. Isolation.
For decades, Charles lived as a recluse. He kept meticulous records of everything, avoided people. And then in 1949, after years of this reclusiveness, Charles performed his own final act.
It's just unbelievable.
He put an end to his beloved dog's life, and then he took his own.
The third family member to meet a tragic end connected directly to that house.
And this final act, it prompted one last desperate gesture from the last surviving sibling, Edwin, who had moved far away years before.
What was that?
When Edwin passed away in 1970, his final request in his will was that all remaining family belongings, every piece of furniture, every painting, every letter, be gathered up and incinerated.
Wow. He wanted to erase it all.
It implies this profound fear, doesn't it? A fear of what the house and the things inside it held.
A final attempt to lift a curse by destroying the physical remnants.
But by then, it was too late. The sorrow, the memory, it had already seeped into the very architecture of the place.
So by the 1950s, the mansion is just standing there, abandoned, decaying.
No longer a symbol of ambition, it was just this hollowed-out monument to a dynasty that had been destroyed from the inside out. And this decay, this is when the next chapter begins.
The transition from a tragic historical site to one of America's most famous haunted places.
It stood empty for a while. You can picture it, tattered curtains, peeling paint. Then it was bought and converted into a boarding house.
And that's when the stories really start. The documented ones.
And they came from the most unexpected sources.
Not the tenants at first.
No. From the construction workers who were doing the conversion, practical, skeptical men. And they started reporting this constant feeling of unease.
Like what specifically?
Sudden, bone-deep chills in rooms that should have been warm. Tools would vanish from where they just set them down, only to reappear somewhere else entirely.
I read one story about footsteps.
Yes, a worker was on the ground floor pulling up old floorboards, and he heard the distinct click-clack of high heels walking right above his head. But when he looked up, he remembered that the floor of the room above him was completely collapsed. It was impassable. There was nowhere for anyone to walk.
So even these hardened skeptics felt it, that the house wasn't empty.
They couldn't deny it. And when the tenants moved in, the reports became more frequent and more personal.
The feeling of being watched.
Overwhelmingly. Tenants reported that physical sensation all the time, seeing silent figures at the ends of hallways who would just vanish, doors opening and closing on their own.
To the point that people refused to stay in certain rooms.
Yes. They claimed the atmosphere inside some rooms was just too heavy, too unbearable to sleep in.
Then in the 1970s, it's sold again. It becomes a restaurant.
And an event venue. Yeah. By this point, the haunting is part of its identity. It's part of the brand. And this new life draws in a whole new crowd.
Paranormal investigators, psychics, and just, thrill seekers.
All of them eager to experience the echoes of the Lemp family's despair for themselves.
And if the house is a witness, then William J. Lemp's office. That has to be the epicenter of the sorrow.
No. It is. It's the room where the first two tragic ends took place. Even today, the staff who work there report avoiding that room after dark.
People describe a feeling in there, right?
A profound physical heaviness, like the air itself is pressing in on your chest with grief the moment you walk in.
And objects move.
Investigators have documented it repeatedly. Objects sliding on desks, heavy chairs shifting position with no one near them.
There are also visual reports.
Very consistent ones. Repeated sightings of a male apparition dressed in early 20th century clothes standing by the window looking out who just vanishes when he's approached.
But the weirdest thing about that room is the emotional feedback.
It's so unsettling. Multiple, completely unrelated visitors have reported the same thing. A sudden, overwhelming wave of grief that brings them to tears instantly.
Just a deep, profound sadness.
It disappears the second they step back out into the hallway. It's as if for a moment they tapped into William's final, crushing despair.
Okay, so if William's office is the epicenter of sorrow, investigators describe Charles Lemp's room as something else entirely.
They call it the location of the deepest dread. The feeling in there isn't sadness. It's described as oppressive, even suffocating.
And this is where technology starts to fail.
Constantly. Batteries and cameras and recorders, they drain instantly the moment you cross the threshold. Equipment just malfunctions for no reason.
And the reports go from psychological to physical in that room.
They do. People report feeling suddenly dizzy or nauseous. Some have even stumbled backward, claiming they felt a distinct push, like they were being physically repelled from the room.
And the poltergeist type activity is stronger here.
Much stronger. Objects flying off shelves, dark shadows darting across the room with a sense of purpose. It suggests a very different kind of energy than the lingering sadness in William's office. This feels more active, maybe frustrated.
And the stories from the current staff, the people who work there day in and day out, they are genuinely terrifying.
There's one anecdote about a bartender. She was working alone, closing up late. She heard these heavy footsteps, pacing back and forth behind a closed door.
So she called out.
Yeah, asked if anyone was there. The footsteps stopped instantly, and then she watched as the doorknob slowly started to turn from the inside.
She left, I assume.
She fled the building. Wouldn't you?
In a second. Then there's the story of the voice.
The employee cleaning up after hours. The lights flicker, and she hears a deep, clear, disembodied voice whisper right behind her ear.
Get out.
Get out! These aren't just historical echoes. These are contemporary warnings. It suggests an intelligence, something possessive over the space.
Beyond the adult family members, there's that other incredibly persistent report. The one tied to the family's deepest secret.
The childlike spirit. The one linked to the rumor of the monkey boy.
And this is maybe the most tragic and enduring mystery of the whole place.
It is. Because whether that child existed historically or not, the presence of a small childlike spirit is one of the most widely reported phenomena in the mansion.
It's like the emotional weight of the story itself created a presence.
That's one theory. And the sightings are numerous. A small figure seen peering out of upstairs windows, even when those floors are locked and empty.
And the sounds.
The audio evidence is particularly unnerving. Captures of distinct, playful giggling in the hallways, the light patter of tiny footsteps running across the upper floors when no one is up there.
And there's a photograph, isn't there?
The wedding photographer took a picture during a reception, and in the reflection in a large mirror, there's a clear image of a small, pale, childlike face.
A face that didn't belong to any of the guests.
Or staff, no one at the event. It's a chilling piece of evidence because this presence seems both playful and profoundly sad.
So all of this brings us to the modern attempts to, quantify this. The paranormal researchers.
The professionals who go in with equipment trying to track and measure the energy.
And their findings just deepen the mystery.
They really do. They use standard methods tracking for EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, temperature drops, EMF spikes.
And the EVP captures are shockingly clear sometimes.
There's one well-documented session where a researcher asked who was present, and a clear male voice was recorded replying with the name William.
Wow.
Even more chilling, another session captured a soft female voice whispering, "Help me." And moments later, a much louder, more authoritative male voice shouts, "Leave!"
Which suggests an interaction between spirits.
A dynamic, yeah. Maybe protective, maybe possessive, we don't know.
And the physical evidence defies logic.
Entire rooms have been documented dropping to near freezing temperatures in a matter of seconds, then returning to normal just as quickly.
And the thermal cameras.
They've repeatedly captured cold, human-shaped forms standing right next to investigators, even when the air temperature in the room is completely normal. It suggests an active absorption of energy that science just can't explain.
So, after looking at all this, the history, the family's collapse, the modern evidence, we have to ask the big question. Why this house? What makes the Lemp Mansion so active?
A lot of theories gravitate towards this concept of imprint energy.
Explain that.
It's the idea that moments of extreme trauma or emotion, like a tragic end, intense fear, deep despair, that energy doesn't just disappear, It leaves a kind of residue in the physical space.
So it's not an intelligent ghost necessarily, but more like a recording.
In this theory, yes, the emotional energy clings to the environment. It embeds itself in the walls, the wood, and it replays fragments of that emotional state like an endless echo.
And the Lemp Mansion is a textbook case for that theory.
A perfect candidate. Each tragic end in that house carved this deep emotional scar into its structure. The walls themselves became repositories for all that accumulated suffering.
So when visitors feel that sudden weight, that crushing sadness,
They could be experiencing the echo of that suffering being broadcast by the architecture itself. And of course, others believe the sheer number of tragedies, especially how they ended, means the spirits themselves remain because their ends were so sudden and unresolved.
but there's another layer to the theory, one that goes all the way back to the beginning, back to the caves.
Yes, the unique geology. That limestone foundation and the vast network of tunnels, they weren't just the source of the family's wealth.
Some researchers think they act as a kind of conductor.
Or a storage device for paranormal energy. A massive battery for this kind of psychic residue.
So the roots of the empire could be fueling its spectral future.
It's a compelling idea. That constant, unchanging coldness from below ground might be preserving the emotional coldness and despair that destroyed the family above ground.
The story of the mansion has now fully evolved. It's not just a piece of St. Louis history anymore.
No, it's a globally known paranormal landmark. And its current existence is, well, it's complicated.
It lives a dual identity.
It really does. It's a business. You can have a fine dining experience there. You can stay overnight. You can take a ghost tour that leans heavily on the family's tragic story.
It's a very delicate balance.
The operators try to honor the history, the incredible story of the brewing empire, without simply exploiting the suffering of the people who died there. It's both a memorial and a cautionary tale.
It raises a big question, doesn't it? Does turning a place like this into a tourist attraction exploit the dead?
Or does it ensure they're never forgotten? For better or worse, the ghost stories have made sure the Lemp name and their private sorrow is remembered by millions.
If we compare this place to other famous haunts in America, like the Stanley Hotel or the Winchester Mystery House, what really sets the Lemp Mansion apart?
I think it's the concentration, the sheer concentration of tragedy within a single family, inside a single building.
It's not a collection of random, unrelated events.
No. It's one generation after another, collapsing under the weight of the same despair, repeating the same final act, often in the very same rooms. It's tragedy distilled into its most potent form.
And that's the cultural allure, isn't it? We're drawn to these stories of immense wealth not being able to buy happiness.
Exactly. The Lemps had it all: power, money, success, and they lost it in this spectacular, self-destructive way.
The story hits a universal nerve. It strips away the illusion that wealth can protect you from heartbreak. It reads like a Gothic novel.
A grand mansion, a thriving dynasty, and a house that just refuses to let the dead rest.
The mansion continues to exist in this state of contradiction.
Beautiful Gilded Age architecture that hides these layers of unbearable suffering. Rooms filled with light and laughter during the day that cast these deep, eerie shadows at night.
So whether the phenomena are genuine intelligent spirits or just the powerful manifestation of all that accumulated sorrow,
the result is the same. The mansion is intensely alive with memory. And it forces you to confront that really unsettling question. Can sorrow leave an imprint so powerful that it actually outlives the body?
the history of this family is just such a stark contrast. You have this incredible human achievement on one hand.
The innovation of Lager, the genius of using the caves, a classic American success story.
And on the other, this deep psychological suffering that just utterly consumed them. Their accomplishments are now completely overshadowed by the volume of their sorrow.
The mansion stands as this looming reminder of how fragile our ambitions can be, a place where the past isn't really past. It feels like it's still breathing.
So to recap, we started with Johann Adam Lemp's brilliant introduction of German lager and the industrial empire he built from the limestone caves beneath St. Louis.
An empire that led to an architectural palace, a symbol of ultimate success.
And we end with the devastating reality that this family, despite every advantage, suffered this catastrophic, multi-generational chain of personal tragedies.
Tragic ends that echoed across the decades, transforming their magnificent home into a haunted monument, saturated with the psychic residue of inherited grief.
The Lemp family literally built their multi-million-dollar empire on a foundation of cold storage.
On the deep, naturally refrigerated caves that preserved their product and made them rich.
So here's our final thought for you to consider. Did the literal perpetual coldness that existed beneath the mansion eventually reflect a figurative, emotional coldness that seeped up into their lives?
A coldness that contributed to the chilling, tragic, and spectacular end of their dynasty.